Okay. All right, moving on with mitzvah nun gimel. Mitzvat bedin ladun beniskei abor. The bedin is commanded to judge a case involving the din of bor. Bor is one of the types of damages. There are 4 types of damages. We already spoke about ox. That's a shore. One of them is bor. Bor is a pit. So someone digs a pit, okay, in the middle of his property, okay, or even in public property, certainly, and someone trips over and they come, right, exactly. So you got so Bet Din has to judge the cases. That's a mitzvah for the Bet Din to judge the cases. In a place where it's a hazard to people. Shneimar, the pasuk says, "V'chi yiftach ish bor," kemo shekatuv parasha, like it's written in Parasha Mishpatim. V'lav davka bor, because not specifically just a pit. Ela afilu shiach u'me'ara, it could apply even to a ditch or a vault or some sort of excavation. V'lo neimar bor, ela lelamed sheyeh bo kedei lamit. The Torah only specifies a pit because, in order for one to be liable for the death of an animal that falls into the excavation, it has to be similar to a bore, similar to a pit in terms that it has to be a depth that can cause death. How deep does something have to be to cause death? Dehainu asara tefachim, which is 10 tefachim, approximately 1 meter. That is the minimum depth that it could cause death. Not necessarily will cause death, but that is the minimum. Anything less than 1 meter or 80 centimeters, depending on how you hold the size of a tefach, okay, won't cause any death. Shorsha kvar nichtav. The purpose of this mitzvah has already been written. We already spoke about it. We need justice. We need for our civilization. Otherwise, everything will go haywire. Dinea. The laws of this mitzvah are numerous. Kigon Mashe Amnu. Chachamim said shor velo adam. It refers to an ox falling into a pit, which excludes the liability for the death of a person who falls into the pit. Hamor velo chelim. A donkey and not utensils that fall. Hofer bor bishuto, also if one digs a pit within his own property, v'ifkir shuto velo boro, and then renounces ownership of the property, but not of the pit. He retains ownership of the pit. Hayab, he's liable to pay for damages. Ifkir boro gamken, also if a person, if he renounces the pit as well as the property, patur. In that case, he's exempt. Lefi shebir shuto hafar, because he dug the pit in his own property. He dug it in his own property. He's allowed to do so, even though he doesn't currently own the pit. If something happens over there, it's not his fault. Or maybe it will be his fault, but he's not a chayav to pay. This will not be the case if a guy digs a pit in public property. From the beginning, he's doing it illegally. He's liable in all cases. Similarly, if someone digs a pit within his own property, but very close to Bathurst Street, and it's a hazard, and he doesn't renounce ownership of the pit, and there's nothing separating your pit and the public domain, like the people who dig leushin. What is leushin? Yesodot lekotlehem, foundations for the walls of their home. Patur, in that case, he's exempt. Umiperechen patur is also exempt, even though it's impossible for the public to protect themselves, because it's so close to the street. We exempt him because it's impossible to establish a society without people having to make foundations for the home. So therefore, back then the homes were very, very close to the public thoroughfare. It wasn't like today where we have a front yard of 30 feet that gives us a room. So back then the homes were mamash on the street. So that meant that they had to dig. In Europe, you see that a lot. Homes are mamash like right there on the street. Vedina megalebor. What happens if someone uncovers a pit? Even though he didn't dig the pit. He is also chayav. There's construction on Bathurst Street. They cover a thing with planks of wood, and you go over there and you uncover the planks of wood so that somebody can go there and trips in. Okay, you're chayav. Even though it was dug by somebody else, nonetheless, you deem to be the owner of the hazard because you're the one who exposed it. And there's different laws that apply regarding exposing a pit, whether it's through erosion, which are dependent on the weakness or the strength of the covering. Also, the law of a pit that is owned by partners, with regards to covering the pit. What happens if a pit was dug by 2 individuals, one after the other? Who does the liability fall to? Also, the parameters of the obligation that an individual has to distance a hazard from the public, so that harm should not come to people. For example, water, thorns, or glass shards. You might have water going through your field and can pose a hazard, or you have glass shards you have to clean up. Something like glass falls, on the street near you have to clean up, sweep it up. All of these details מבוארים בפרק שלישי וחמישי מקמא ובתרא can be found in the 3rd and 5th chapters of Baba Kama. ונוהגת בזכרים, this applies to men, שעליהם לעשות דין, because we already learned that the obligation to judge is only through men. ולא בנקבות שהן אינן דנות, it doesn't apply to women because they do not serve as judges. אבל מכל מקום, but nevertheless, בכלל דין התשלומין הן, women are included in the law of restitution. That means if a woman drops a glass and doesn't clean up the glass and somebody gets injured from the broken glass, she would have to pay ben hiziku or huziku, whether they caused the damage through a pit or they suffered damage through another pit. Okay, I think we'll stop here. We'll continue next time.